Now, we've all been seeing the horrendous pictures coming from Gaza as starvation crisis hits that country, with dozens dying from hunger, and the World Food Programme saying 90,000 women and children in urgent need of treatment for malnutrition.
Joining us to discuss the latest news about the situation in Gaza is Executive Director of UNICEF Ireland, Peter Power, and freelance journalist based in Jerusalem, Will Christou. And Will, we may start with yourself. As we mentioned there, Gaza is in starvation crisis. The World Food Programme saying 90,000 women and children in urgent need of treatment for malnutrition. Can you describe for us what it is like, what it's been like in Gaza over the last week?
Sure, it's unfortunately been unimaginable. Everyone we're speaking to, if they're not receiving treatment for malnutrition, they've lost a lot of weight. We were speaking to a pregnant woman last week who, despite her pregnancy, has lost 9 kilos. I think when we think about starvation, we think that someone somewhere, must be able to get food. The middle class will be fine. It might just be a portion of the population, but in this case, it's everyone. And doctors we've spoken to have said that they don't have the supplies to adequately treat children and women who come in who are suffering from malnutrition. So it's a grim situation.
And I mean, we're seeing the pictures there. The world is seeing the pictures, Will, and just the shock. But yesterday now, 2 Israeli human rights organisations have come out and said that their country is committing genocide. This is the first time they've come out and said this. Is the mood shifting now?
I think so, and I think this is why on Saturday night we saw Israel announce some new humanitarian measures. They've for weeks have said there is no hunger crisis, and if there is a hunger crisis, it's not because of us. But there's just been a huge international outcry, and this war has been going on for 21 months. We've seen lots of horrible things. But I think it's very difficult for people to deny an image of a baby starving, of corpses that have little more than skin and bones. So we've seen more than a dozen countries issue statements urging Israel to stop its blockade on Gaza, and we've seen over 128 organizations talk about how dire the situation is and how it needs to change quickly.
Yeah, but we see these countries, they keep making these statements, and even Keir Starmer said last night that he had a new plan, and the French and Spanish governments, and they were all coming together, and he was presenting this to Donald Trump. Do we know what this new plan is?
Not yet, and I think we've got a couple different, let's say, action plans on the floor. Yesterday, there was the start of the French-Saudi conference on the two-state solution, and we know that France is trying to pull together a couple different countries in the EU, and it's urged the UK as well to recognize the Palestinian state by the UN General Assembly in September. And the UK and other countries have resisted this. So I think there is an effort to put pressure on Israel among different states, but there's also resistance from countries like the US and Australia, for example.
A pause came into effect, Will, on July 27th, but the BBC reported a strike had taken place just hours after a pause was enacted. Will future pauses guarantee safety on the ground, do you think?
Look, I think the issue, and this is what humanitarians are telling me, the issue with these new measures is that nobody knows how long they'll last, and it's unclear exactly what they are. I mean, even the humanitarian pauses, they're 10 hours a day until further notice. It might end tomorrow, it might end in a week, it might keep on going until we have a ceasefire. We don't know. And then as part of the humanitarian measures, new humanitarian corridors were announced for the UN to go into Gaza. I was speaking to folks in the UN yesterday, and they say they don't even know really what that means yet. So it's all very unclear. And the issue is these measures need to be consistent for the population to know that, for the population to be able to know where their next meal is coming from. And if everyone is in fear that tomorrow fighting will resume or tomorrow aid will stop, it becomes a very difficult situation. It's difficult for doctors to plan. It's difficult for mothers and fathers to plan where their next meal is coming from.
It certainly is. Chris, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And here in studio, as we were saying, Executive Director of UNICEF, Peter Power. Peter, you were talking to your number 2 in Gaza yesterday. What's she saying? What's her name again? What was her name?
Eddie Higgins. She's a Cork woman. We're very proud that an Irish woman is effectively leading the humanitarian aid effort on behalf of UNICEF inside Gaza.
What is she saying? What's it like on the ground?
Well, she's saying it's almost beyond words now to describe what is happening there. But the figures speak for themselves. We got the up-to-date figures. As you know, hundreds of thousands of people are hungry. 5,000 children have been diagnosed in UNICEF malnutrition centres as suffering from acute malnutrition. Unfortunately, as we now know, 80 children have died of malnutrition. And these are the sad facts on the ground. There is a hunger crisis and children are dying now. So what we hope and what we've heard in the last 24 hours is these humanitarian aid corridors, humanitarian pauses will allow the United Nations to come in, because we've been very clear from the outset that the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has been a complete failure. I mean, 1,000 people being shot, queuing for food is the definition of failure. It doesn't happen in any other humanitarian context in the world. So we hope now that this new dispensation will allow us to flood Gaza with vitally needed humanitarian assistance.
I don't think anyone will forget the images they've seen of the children over the past couple of weeks. How much aid needs to be delivered into Gaza on a daily basis to make a difference at the moment?
Enormous amounts, Shiva, because there has been an effective blockade of aid now for over 2 months, with extremely limited quantities getting in. So during the ceasefires, we know from January until about March, we're getting in, the United Nations, including UNICEF, WFP, UNRWA and so forth, getting in about 500 to 600 trucks a day. So imagine Dublin, completely blockaded, a big wall around Dublin. You need about 500 trucks of food, humanitarian assistance, blankets, tarpaulins, vaccines, medical equipment, antibiotics, painkillers, you name it. That's what a population of this size needs, and it takes that amount of trucks to get in. So that's what we need over the coming weeks, and we hope that we'll be able to do it.
These trucks are at borders, ready to go in. This is the thing. These trucks are there, they're full, they're waiting to go in. So how many, say, yesterday do we know got through?
Yesterday, about 170 trucks got through.
170.
So it's about a third of what we need to get through. But this was only announced the previous day. So we're hoping that will treble over the coming days to bring in. But what we're saying consistently is that this level of about 500 trucks a day needs to be consistent for weeks and weeks and weeks. Like there's 2 million people, almost half the population of Ireland need to be fed every single day. But to answer your question, Alan, we have enough, as in the United Nations, have enough supplies right now on the southern part of the border, on the Egyptian side, to fill 6,000 trucks. So we could bring those in tomorrow morning. If all the openings were allowed. In that idea.
So these ceasefires need to stay in place to get these trucks in during this 10 hours a day. Donald Trump has said there is real starvation. The first time he said this in Gaza. He wants to set up food centres. Do we know what these are going to be or where they're going to be?
No, we just heard that last night. I mean, we had 400 food centres, aid distribution points around Gaza during the ceasefire. That was working very effectively. Remember, these agencies, WFP, UNICEF and so forth, we've been doing this for 80 years. We know how to do it in extremely difficult contexts. And the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation reduced that to 4, which is now down to 1. It has been a complete failure. People are dying. So we need to ramp up the area around which distribution points our food is distributed. There needs to be a lot more of those. So we don't know the details of what Donald Trump is suggesting, but we do know that Israel has now agreed to allow the United Nations lead the effort for the foreseeable future. We don't know how long that will be, but we know it has to be over a sustained period of time.
Trump, it seems, has taken a harsher stance to this for the first time ever, it would seem.
Yes, I mean, but the situation is quite desperate. Absolutely desperate. I mean, it's inhumane, it's barbaric, it just cannot continue. So we've reached an inflection point now where something had to happen because people were literally dying of starvation. Children, we've seen the images, skin and bones on children. And that just, humanity will not allow that to continue. So we need these pauses to last for a sustained long period of time.
I mean, it is going to go on, and we were just saying, do we see this coming to an end very soon? And I don't think any of us think it is going to, but at least these trucks are getting in. There is some aid getting in more than was there, which is a good thing. While we have you here, Peter, we just want to ask you, because your name has been mentioned for the presidential race, are you in the running?
Well, as you know, the Fianna Fáil parliamentary party hasn't really decided yet what the process will be towards selecting.
If they gave you the nomination, would you accept
presidency.
it?
Well, we don't know yet whether the party's even going to run a candidate.
Oh, I think
so it's a little bit early yet, and then a process has to be outlined as to how that might happen. So I think I'll just keep my counsel until we get to that situation.
Okay.
Well, Peter Power, Executive Director of UNICEF Ireland, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.